Hello, everybody. I think some of you have met me before. Some of them I know you have because you're from Brewin Dolphin, some of you. My name is Matt Still. I head up our relationship management with professionals in the southwestern Wales. Emma, as you know, I think Legal News Wales is a great platform, and thank you very much for having us on it today. And we'll be talking about financial well-being in the legal services. I won't be talking for long. I may interrupt occasionally. And if you want to interrupt occasionally, you are very welcome as well. Emma's mentioned there'll be a Q&A at the end, which if you've got anything pressing you want to save until then, you're very welcome to, but also very welcome to interject or raise a question, type it in, whatever it might be. I'm sure we'll be happy to field it as it comes along. Just a little bit of to explain what we'll do today. So around about an hour, about 5 or 10 minutes of that will be just me doing this introduction, and then say a 12-20 minute Q&A at the end. And in between that time, I'll have two colleagues who will be talking about financial well-being. As Emma's mentioned, and you'll have seen on the invitation, this is on the back of a report that Brewin Dolphin have done with the Lawyer magazine, and it is a survey based on solicitors and lawyers' attitudes to their own investments, savings and pensions, and in particular, I guess, what you can do about it if you think it would be useful to do something about it. Emma, if you're able to share the deck at some stage, or am I not seeing that? Fantastic, thank you. So Emma's got control of the deck. So as we go through, we'll be going, Emma, next slide, please. So Emma, next slide, please, if that's possible. So here's me. You can already see me. I've got Hannah Rocky, who is a channel manager at Brewin Dolphin, and Greg Tate, who's a financial planner at Brewin Dolphin. Both Hannah and I come from legal backgrounds. Hannah has worked in various law firms in the Southwest and in London, and is from a business development point of view. And my background as a lawyer, and then also working for the Law Society and various regulatory bodies associated with Law Society over the years. But now I work with Brewin Dolphin. And Greg is an expert in financial planning, working with solicitors. So if I can go on to the next slide, because some of you will be familiar with Brewin Dolphin and some of you won't. But what this slide is really showing, and it's the association of why we're talking about financial well-being. And the reason behind it is there are three aspects of financial well-being. One is physical. Those of us who enjoy going to do a bit of exercise, go to the gym. We hopefully know that the mind and the body are connected, and if you keep yourself healthy, then hopefully it keeps you mentally sharp, and vice versa. But financial well-being is also a issue, and Hannah will come on to it being a cause of some stress for some people. As I say, I come from a legal background. When I joined the legal profession, there was no such thing as auto-enrollment with my employer. Kind of looking back and thinking, might be quite useful if there had been, because when I was younger, thought of being retired was many years away, and as the years gone by and it's got ever closer, it's become, I guess, more of an issue, which I'll be talking to Greg about at some stage. So Emma, if I can go to the next slide. I'm going to hand over to Hannah in a second, but the financial wellbeing report is you can see it on the right, will be available to the legal profession, and it'll be available next week to the legal profession. And so Hannah will explain how we can distribute that to you. Really what we're interested in is from you being on this call, is if you feel you want to have a conversation with us, if any of what we talk about is going to resonate, then please do pick up the phone or drop us an email to myself, Hannah, or Greg. Or if you also feel this will be useful for your colleagues, then please do refer on as well. But Hannah will cover a bit more of that in more detail. So Hannah, if I hand over to you now. Oh, you're on mute, Hannah.
There we go, lovely, gesticulating without saying anything. So I was just going to say I've got a couple of screens going on at the moment, so if I start to flick towards the corner, it's just because I'm looking at slides on a slightly bigger screen. So Emma, if you can click on to the next one. So the report itself, as was mentioned, this was a huge survey. It received nearly 500 responses from those in the legal sector, so a phenomenal response. And what we did is we took those results and then we looked at how we were going to analyse them, look at them, and how we then present them. And the way that we've done that is that we've identified 3 key groups. So you've got your pre-partners, your partners, and then your later years partners. Now, those that sit within pre-partners, this was in fact our largest group of respondents. These were typically people who were born in the 1990s, some a little bit earlier, some a little later, with less than peakily 10 years, and these were likely to be members of the lowest income group. Then moving through to partners, the second group that we'll look at today. This is our second largest group, and these were solicitors born a little bit earlier, born in the 1970s and 80s, who are either salaried or equity partners, whose wealth had increased and whose employment status had probably changed from PLYE to self-employed. And now leading on to our third and our smallest group, we call these our later years partners. These were our longest serving partners who were full equity and according to their age were statistically more likely to be planning for their retirement and looking to exit the partnership. So I'm moving through onto the next slide. So most of the questions that we asked in the survey were multiple choice. But the questions that you see on screen, these were the results that came off the back of us asking an open question. We asked the question, what is financial stress? What is financial stress to you? And these are some of the responses we had. And we were really fortunate, respondents were incredibly candid with us, all about their views, their experiences of their own personal financial position. And as you'll see here, the views tend to be reflective of either not having done more sooner or not knowing what to do at the current time. So then moving through, Emma, to the next slide. So you've hopefully coming through. Lovely. Okay, great. So here's a couple more quotes that came off the back actually from those that sit within that pre-partners group. Now, what you'll see on the left, and the back one. Lovely. Okay, great. So what you'll see on the left is actually indicative of the sorts of lawyers that we see today, coming from a much more socially mobile sector. And so actually people that are now becoming lawyers may not be particularly from wealthy backgrounds, or people that would have historically sought financial advice or sought the advice of a more formal advisor, like a wealth manager. And then in that case, they're not able to lean on the support of their friends and family, which we'll later discuss that so many people in fact do. Now on the right hand side, you've got a quote from someone which is actually incredibly reflective of others in the pre-partners group, where you're looking at it's actually the short-term factors, the short-term elements that people are saving for that's actually stopping them or holding them back from potentially looking forward and planning for their future. So things that come up in there are saving for cost of childcare, purchasing first property, and even looking to paternity leave.
And Hannah, if I could interrupt you, I had one job to do, and it was to introduce this session and also explain that during the session, we're going to ask you as an audience 4 series of questions. And this is really to get you thinking about yourselves, maybe, but it'd be also just interesting to share this feedback. So we're going to share some feedback from the report, but Emma, if you're able to put the first question to the audience and see, and this is with regard to your, I guess, your own experience around finances.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Matt. You've saved me a job and something that I can scratch off my notes. So this is a question. We'll come back to it in a few moments' time, but it'll just give you a chance to have a look at it now. So Emma, if you were to click onto the next slide for me, whilst people are doing that in the background. Great. So those 3 text responses that we saw on the previous screen, we took those, we extrapolated some of the key themes, and then we put them into a word cloud creator, or here, I believe it's Wordle that we've used, that's created this image where you see the larger things on screen and actually those that came up most frequently. So not saving enough was the single largest comment from solicitors of all ages. So it's that fearing that they would not have enough money for some type of event, regardless of when that might be. And we'll go on to talk about why people think that's the case later on. House purchases, one I've mentioned before, but one that did come up at time and time again, resonated with many of the pre-partner group, which, if we're looking in the current context, more people than ever having to save for a much longer period of time than they would have done previously. And then interestingly, by way of contrast, lack of knowledge actually with somewhere in there, right in the middle. It looks like it wasn't mentioned all that many times, but actually, as you'll see later on off the back of another question, actually that was cited as one of the key reasons that people weren't seeking financial advice. And in fact, we'll come on to that just now. So Emma, if we can click through. Lovely. And if I think you click through 3 more times, there's a couple of images that will pop up. Lovely, great. So across all 3 groups, there was a resounding trio of views cited as hindering solicitors' personal financial plans. First was lack of knowledge, time, and their disposable funds. And this suggests that solicitors lack the knowledge to confidently begin their personal financial plan and are then too busy to teach themselves how best to invest any disposable income. This then results in a negative cycle, which without any guidance can be difficult to break. So taking each of these in isolation, so firstly, knowledge. Now, some solicitors are comfortable in admitting that they lack an understanding of where to begin or how to manage a personal financial plan. However, some don't, and again, we'll come back to that later on. Time is another factor, and the vast majority of solicitors point to having little to no time to think about savings, investments, and pensions, let alone retirement, which for most solicitors responding to the survey was 20, if not 30 years in the future. And then thirdly, disposable funds. Now, many younger solicitors in the lower income bracket are caught in a conundrum of wanting to save for short-term events, such as first-time home, building a family, which then conflict with their long-term pension contributions. So even if there were time and knowledge, many solicitors feel they cannot currently afford to save for later life.
So Hannah, I've happily got a plan. It just happens to be at my gym. So when I talk about sort of the health and mind and finances all being connected, what's a financial plan?
You're asking me, but in fact, we've got.
Do you want me to answer that rather than Hannah?
I think so. Yeah, let's go for the qualified person here.
As a financial planner, my nose is now out of joint. But in terms of the short answer, a financial plan is a plan to ensure that you never run out of money. But what does that mean? So what we'll do is we'll sit down with people and we will try to map out as best we can what that person would like the rest of his or her life to look like. Because if we do that, we can then understand what income or what capital is required at different points in the future, depending on what the hopes and aspirations of each individual are. So for instance, for a number of people, when they get to the point they retire, they'll want to splash out on an extravagant holiday, or they might want to buy a new car to as a reward for getting to retirement. But the plan will give us a series of actions to take to make sure that you have that money and that capital when you require it. Because if we get to retirement, then your financial life really comes down to one question. Will my money outlive me, or will I outlive my money? So the whole purpose of the plan is to make sure you take action in plenty of time and that you have the resources available to make sure that your money outlives you. The plan will not be set in stone. Typically, it will be reviewed every year. It will review to understand if you're on track or if you're behind track for whatever reason, or often because of changes in what you want the future to look like. So as an example there, if we take COVID, for example, if somebody was made redundant because of COVID, their mum or dad close to retirement might think, well, actually, I need to help my child. He or she has their own family, their own needs. I'll help them rather than retire now, and we'll make a change to the plan. But essentially, the plan is there to understand exactly what is or what isn't affordable throughout life, and just to repeat myself, to make sure that you don't run out of money. The plan will typically have a plan A and plan B. Plan A is you get to where you want to get to in the future, and nothing untoward happens along the way. Plan B, again, quite apt given what's happened this year, is if you were to pass away prior to retirement, or if you can't work because of ill health, what then happens to your hopes and aspirations, what happens to your money? We need to make sure that plan B is in place so that if anything happens, you then don't run out of money again.
Brilliant.
Great, thanks Greg, that's really useful understanding at this point. So Emma, if I can ask you to flick through, let's say 2 slides, I think it is. We might be working with it. Lovely, great.
Sorry, did you want me to share the results of the poll at any time or keep them to the end?
If you can hold those for a handful of slides. We brought it in early. We'll leave people in suspense for the time being.
Sorry, no worries.
Lovely. Thanks, Emma. So now diving into our 3 groups. So the first one we're going to look at is the pre-partner group. As a reminder, this was our largest group and typically the lowest of earners. Respondents in this group were defined as being born 1990 onwards, and salaries range from under 50k all the way through to 150k. And actually, we did have a few anomalies that tipped over 300k. I'd be very interested to find out where they work. So it came as a little surprise that the lowest earning group of solicitors mostly thought they were not yet worthy of instructing a personal financial advisor, and you'll see that only 10% currently do so. Instead, what we found actually was that this group, and perhaps this is a little bit more predictable, these were people that were looking to self-invest, so they were looking to use platforms such as Nutmeg or other similar methods. So aware of investments, not seeking structured financial advice, but they are aware of it. But what actually was particularly worrying about this group was that a staggering number, so 65%, do not believe they're saving enough for the present or future. So a staggering number. And we can then combine this with what we read earlier with some of those free text responses, and we can come to a nice conclusion that we can see a connection between actually, again, it's those short-term savings, those short-term needs that are potentially stopping people from saving for the future, or at least feeling like they are preparing for the future. So to what extent does this group of solicitors admit to suffering from stress? So this is where the results of the initial question should come in, I believe. So, so to what extent are your personal finances causing you stress? Okay, interesting. So actually they're pretty similar to what we see on screen. Sorry, I'm saying on screen, and if you can flick onto the next screen. Okay, great. So when we asked when this was included in the survey, you can see that 1 in 10 of our junior colleagues find that they're constantly stressed by their personal finances. And looking back at your responses, actually, it's pretty similar, albeit I think you're a little bit more cautious than our respondents seem to be. So we know that people are, their finances are causing them stress at some point and to some either lesser or greater extent. And the survey results showed that paralegals suffer the most, actually. So those arguably perhaps towards the early stages in their career, or actually perhaps that's not fair, but those who are typically the lower earners when you look at sort of the broad spectrum of solicitors' career. The over PQE group reported a remarkably similar set of results to the trainee contingent, but the survey data suggests that the underlying factors of financial related stress differ. Many PQE 5 to 10s report financial worries in the years approaching relationship commitments such as marriage and beginning a family, coupled with the need to purchase a home. So moving through to the next slide. Lovely, great. So Matt in our rehearsal was saying that I should point out that we're not expecting you to be able to read this on the screen. This is just us picking out some of the key findings from the reports. We wanted to include some snapshots so it's familiar when you do receive it. So thinking about how we combat financial stress. So one of the things we highlight in the report is the power of compounding. Now I'll leave Greg in a moment to talk in greater depth about this, but on screen is a very simple illustration that shows how an investment made in FTSE 100 of £2,000 back in 1985 with growth would today be worth around 37k. But by way of contrast, it would only be worth 10k in the event that growth from the investments were not retained in the same pot. Now, I said I'd leave this to Greg to explain a little bit more in detail. So, Greg, what else should we know about the power of compounding?
Okay, so I'll explain a little bit more about this slide, but about the power of compounding. So Einstein described it as the 8th wonder of the world, and really, compounding is going to be how you go about making sure that as part of your plan, you don't run out of money. So if I go to the slide first of all, and then I'll bring it back to an example that will probably resonate a bit more with the audience. But what the slide there is saying is that if you invested the £2,000 capital in 1985, when you invest, you'll invest for capital growth and income. So what the slide is saying is that the income is reinvested to get you to the 37,700. It's not reinvested to get you to the 10,500. So demonstrating the effect of reinvesting your returns. If we make that to a question which you might be asking yourselves, such as, do I save now or later? Later, potentially when I have a higher income and therefore a greater opportunity to save. I've got a very quick example for you. So if you saved £500 per month for 30 years and achieved net of inflation, net of costs, a growth of 5% per year, you would have actually saved £180,000, but the growth would have turned that into £415,000. If, on the other hand, you decide to start saving later, you saved £1,000 a month for 20 years, you achieved the same level of growth after cost inflation of 5%, you would have saved £240,000, but you would have roughly the same amount, roughly £415,000 there or thereabouts. So essentially, the power of compounding there means that by saving less for more, for longer, I should say, saving less money per month for a longer period of time, you have a similar outcome. So you've saved £180,000 versus £240,000, but the outcome is the same. So deferring saving is likely going to be costing you money, making it harder to achieve what you want to achieve, and therefore increasing the risk of running out of money in retirement.
If I'd interrupt on this one, when you explain like that, Greg, it sounds very straightforward and obvious. But I've been at Brewin Dolphin 3 years now, and this has been the most important point in that whole time, virtually about everything else. I'm sure we'll all go, yeah, we understand that. But so many of us, it would seem, fiddle around with our savings and draw on this and that. And I think the point you're making there, Greg, is if you can just afford to leave it alone, but put in regular amounts and potentially small amounts in the first instance, you are way better off in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we all know that at different points in life, there are different expenses. So I've got a mortgage, I've got 2 children, 6 to 7, and they drain money. So at different points in life, it's maybe not possible to save exactly what you need to save to get to where you want to get to. Okay, that's just part of life. But actually, if you put away as much as you can as early as possible, the outcome will be exponentially better for you.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Greg. I think that's a real. People should feel very confident in that, actually, and particularly people thinking when we think about people at the beginning of their career, those in the earlier stages, actually what they do have on their side, whilst they may not be, their income may not be as strong as some sort of the partners and those towards the end of their career, but actually what they've got on their side is time to make the most of these investments and compounding. Yeah,
that's spot on, Hannah. It is. So it's that little and often will be less effort in the longer term, and it is using the power of compounding and your time to your advantage.
Great. Now, Emma, if I can ask you to flick on to the next slide. So we've done quite a bit of talking, and I'm going to ask you now also to push through the next question, which is, from 2019, how much do you think a 25-year-old would need to put away each year to then be able to withdraw an annual income of 40k for their pension? Now, I'll give you a little bit of time to think about this, but as I've put on the screen, only 15% of respondents actually got this right. So have a little bit of a think. It may come as a bit of a surprise, but we'll give a minute or two just to see what comes through. Now, if we were in a room, I'd probably see if we could give you a prize or something like that, but virtually, I'm not sure what we'll be able to do. So hopefully this comes through. People swiftly Googling away now looking for a pensions calculator.
Just give a couple of more seconds just to capture everything that's coming in.
Lovely, thanks.
Okay, I'll end the poll now, thanks.
Great, can we see the results of those? at this. Gold stars, I think, almost all round. Can everyone else see these results? Sorry, Emma, I'm not okay with this. With Zoom's polling.
Yep, can see it.
Great. Okay, fantastic. Well, you hit the nail on the head, or the majority of you have. The answer is 17k per animal, or just over. So that works out as around £1,500 per month. So a staggering amount. And there is a few caveats to come with that. And Greg, I think you're going to explain how we came to that figure, or at least the considerations that need to be brought into that, because it is a astonishingly great number.
It is an astonishing large amount. How can what does that work out to be per month? 1,400 so?
1,459.
Yeah.
So in terms of the caveats, because what we would be devastated for is for this to scare people into actually think, I need to run away from this and not answer the question and not address any concerns I have. But what we're saying here is that from age 65 to age 101, that the saver will be drawing £40,000 a year from their portfolio. So at 36 years, that's £1.44 million. So I wouldn't get hung up on the numbers here. I would rather take away a message. In terms of £40,000 a year, typically spending patterns will differ for different people. You wouldn't ordinarily see a client who is drawing £40,000 a year, inflation protected from their portfolio year after year after year, from age 65 to age 101. There'll be a point in time, usually 10 to 15 years into retirement, where people become less active, and as a result, their expenditure will tend to decline. So this is probably an overestimation, but really a kind of a nudge to say, actually, you need to think about it. In terms of saving that much, I'll take a step back, sorry. Also, this doesn't account for state pension. So state pension this year is just over £9,000 a year for anybody who's got the full qualifying years for the state pension. So that's currently 35 years of qualifying employment. When you're saving that money, what we're not accounting for here is where those savings come from. So are they from your pension? Are they from just you? Are they from an employer? For some people, there'll be some kind of inheritance or help from parents, but it's that 1,459 per month is taking all the potential options into account. So if you're a higher rate taxpayer, for example, that would actually only cost you 875. I say only 875. That's 875 in the context of 1,459 savings per month. If you're a basic rate taxpayer, 1,167. You've got employer contributions on top, which will be applicable for some of the people on the call. So it's not as insurmountable as that figure might seem. But again, I would say don't get hung up on the numbers. The key message really is that your income between now and retirement needs to cover the cost of your lifestyle now and post-retirement. And that post-retirement could be, if you're unlucky, 0 years to potentially 30 plus years. So you've got a long time frame where you're no longer earning an income, but that you need to fund a level of lifestyle. So if we take that right back to the previous points about the plan and mapping out the future and understanding what's required at different points in the future, then you can start to understand on a personal level exactly what you and your spouse or your partner would need to save to give you the retirement that you want.
Greg, pensions, it says pensions there. There's stuff been going on with the economy and the market. Think about my own pension, with navel gazing there. But what stuff is happening with the economy. What's the longer term projection for pensions on that? Should we be worried? Should I be worried?
Okay, at your age, Matt, should I be rude? Should I be honest? I wouldn't be particularly worried at your age, Matt. There are two aspects to this. I think one is that the market will always go up and down. It's just part of the investment journey, so you have to be prepared to accept that. The second is that it depends where you are in terms of your plan, because there are effectively two stages. One, accumulation, where you're saving towards a future goal. In that sense, when the market's down like it was mid-March, early April this year, you've got an opportunity because your pension savings are buying, ineffectively, a sale. You're buying assets that you couldn't buy 2 months prior at a much reduced price. So if the market tends to go up over the longer term, but there appears where it's down for a short term, it's a great opportunity to take advantage and save as much as you can to supercharge your long-term savings. The greater risk comes to the decumulation phase when you're either just about at or in retirement, because there's a thing called sequence risk. And sequence risk is the sequence of returns on your investments. If the sequence is worse in the early years, the long-term outcome for you is significantly worse off. So what your plan needs to do is take account of that and potentially have money set aside that's in cash, so it won't grow, but it gives you time to not have to access investments in the future. Any plan really should take account of the potential for a market fall, because that's just part of the journey.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Greg. That really helps bring it to life and hopefully put some people, puts their minds at ease.
It did a little bit.
A little bit. A little bit.
So what bit didn't? What was left unanswered?
Feeling that I'm a little bit older than maybe you were thinking.
Great. So, Everett, if I can ask you, thank you everyone very much for your input there. We'll put some more questions to you later on, so keep posted. So, moving through, if we head back to the report, so Emma, if I can ask you to click through. Lovely. Okay, so a couple of, again, this is just to highlight, this is not for you to be reading on screen right now. I just wanted to pick out some of the headings from the report itself. So, perhaps obvious, but whilst this section says that confidence among pre-partners about saving for the long-term future rises with income, so that higher income encourages long-term thinking, it is, however, still a low number of people and only becomes slightly positive as a percentage once income has either doubled or trebled. So largely people are still not seeking financial advice. But then thinking about actually what prompts pre-partners to seek financial advice, what is it in their lives that prompts them to pick up the phone to someone like Greg to then seek that much needed financial advice? So we were curious to know, and the results revealed that 35, so when I say 35, there's only 10% who actually currently instruct the advice of a financial advisor. So we're looking at quite small numbers here. So 35 pre-partners reported that their relationship with a financial advisor had been prompted. It started by the need to plan for their future. Then had a smaller number, around 15, and had actually come into inheritance. So they were looking to how they would invest that. And then 13 have been prompted by something to do with property, perhaps a sale, or again, something to do with inheritance, passing on after the sale of the property. And then actually 8 have been prompted by a bonus or a pay rise. So again, thinking about those who are moving through their career. Now, Greg, again, this is really interesting actually to come to you to think about actually what is it that is so crucial about seeking financial advice at this point?
I would say that it's about being proactive as opposed to reactive. I think think about the earlier answers to some of the questions. A lot of the questions and a lot of the stress seem to be about not understanding what the outcome might be. So if you're proactive, you can seek out what the answer will be to your questions. Do I have enough money? What do I need to do? And in my experience, even for those clients that we say, well, actually, you're not currently on course to get to where you want to get to, because they know that and because they understand what steps need to be taken to get there, stress significantly reduces. So I would argue that being proactive, setting out a plan, understanding what you need to do is a stress reducer compared to human nature, which is to kick it down the road, not to seek out the answers to difficult questions, and potentially become reactive. And if you're always being reactive, there's the risk that you could be too late to be able to react appropriately to get the outcome that you want to get to. So I think typically people will come to us if they have children, they buy a house, that type of reactive event. But actually, if you're proactive, that's already accounted for. We've already built it into a plan. There might be periods where your savings need to reduce, already built into a plan. We know what the outcome is going to be. You've got peace of mind that you are working towards where you want to get to.
Great. So that whole fail to plan, plan to fail, or perhaps not quite that dramatic, but better placed if you plan.
Yeah, it's a bit of a risk though, not planning to have the money you need for the rest of your life.
That's true. I think maybe we'll have a chat after this call. Cool. So, Emma, again, please can you click through to the next slide? So that covers up our pre-partners group, and now moving through to partners. So again, just to reiterate, this group was our second largest, and as expected, they reported considerably higher earnings. The group is made up of those born in the 1970s, and like I said, salaries are ranging that bit higher, from around 76k to 500k, again with some anomalies just outside of that. So a surprisingly high number, in fact, of salary partners have not taken personal financial advice. And this may have something to do with earnings and their beliefs around how well prepared they are for the future. However, only 36% of equity partners surveyed have not yet appointed a financial advisor. So again, you've got a significant number of both salaried and equity partners who are not yet seeking advice, albeit interesting that there's a far greater number of equity partners who are. The results surprise us in terms of the numbers of partners who self-invest. So much like their younger colleagues or those in the early stages in their career, they were in fact less likely to trust traditional options from bank and financial advisors. And again, looking towards those platforms, or in fact actually looking towards friends and family for advice over and above traditional options, like I said, banks and financial advisors. So Emma, if I can ask you to click through to the next slide. So similarly to before, where we were looking at pre-partners group, we asked the same question. So do you believe you're saving enough for long-term plans such as retirement? Overall, just over half of solicitors in this group did not believe they were saving enough, which is surprising given that actually this group are earning significantly higher amounts compared to those in the earlier stages of their career. In the free text box also that we saw earlier, the survey findings, we saw a recurring group of themes. They were that some partners were paying a loan, which helped them to acquire a stake in the partnership. Partners were then unsure of future profit distribution and were unable to commit to regular investments, so holding on to their cash for fear that they might need it for a rainy day. And partners' incomes were actually potentially tripping the respective pension contribution limits, and individuals are not finding the time to investigate alternative long-term investment strategies. And a surprising number of partners had divorced and then remarried and had seen pension fund assets shared or were paying maintenance to minors from an earlier marriage. So in fact, actually whilst their income might actually be quite high, actually they potentially lost or they've needed to share some of those historic savings. So Emma, if I can ask you to click through to the next slide. They're older and wiser, but still no advisor. So as the headline states, age is not an imperative for seeking advice, as proved by the results from the partner group. We found the majority of salaried partners do not have a financial advisor, irrespective of age, gender, or income. And around 50% of these stated they do not believe they're saving enough for retirement. So again, interesting, got good incomes, and they don't believe they're saving enough for the future. And also the majority aren't seeking financial advice. By way of contrast, 64% of equity partners, I mentioned this earlier, stated that they are already taking the advice of a financial advisor, suggesting that 3 in 10 equity partners, in fact, in their later years of surveys, are not taking financial advice. So whilst we say 64% is still very good, actually this is a portion that are potentially looking to retire, mostly when you look at them compared to their younger colleagues or those perhaps trainees. In fact, they are by far and large much closer to retirement. So still surprising that they're not seeking financial advice, albeit a small number. Sorry, Matt, there's an intake there. Were you about to ask a question?
No, it's just a thought, which was, although there are quite a large number, I guess, percentage-wise, who are taking financial advice, I bet if we asked them, did you wish you had taken this sooner? I bet they would have said yes.
Yeah,
So,
and that was interesting, Matt, because when we looked at our broader, some of those free text responses, those were the sorts of things that were coming up. It was exactly that. People saying, oh, I wish I'd started earlier, or financial stresses every time I check my annual tax bill. It's all those things that are coming back to that lack of time, both in their own personal lives and actually when they look at their career, that lack of time when they're approaching their later years. So again, I've done a bit more talking, and Emma, if I can ask you, there's about a question coming up on the next slide. So if we can ask you to, one, change the slide, and then secondly, to push through the poll question. Lovely. So similarly to what we asked before, but changing or moving the goalpost ever so slightly, we've asked, how much do you think a 40-year-old would need to put away each year to withdraw an annual income of 40k from their pension? So quite a few options on there. I think there's some crossover with what options we gave before, so you can probably rule out a couple of those on screen at the moment. Lovely, and similarly to before, actually only 14% of our respondents got this right. So again, a low number, so no one will be held to account if they miss the goalpost there. Lovely, so the answer is 31k, or 2.5 grand per month, so a staggering amount. So earlier you heard Greg talk about compounding and the value of time, and here, I mean, this is showing really the consequence of that. If you don't save anything, so if you're starting with a completely empty pot at 40 years old, you need to be putting away 31k. Now, Greg, I can see you're looking very calm, but I can imagine there are all sorts of considerations again, probably similar to before.
Yeah, I would say very similar. I think we're not accounting for where the savings will come from. So whether they can still come from employer will obviously depend on your status. But I think it's a really important point there that we're assuming somebody's starting from zero at age 40, which would be very, very unusual. You'll have had your own pension contributions, your employer pension contributions. They will be getting you somewhere towards that target. A lot of the same caveats appear. So we're talking about 36 years, so £1.44 million. I think the key message here again is I wouldn't get hung up on the numbers here. What I would think about is the difference or the disparity between starting from age 40 and starting from, I think it was age 25 earlier, and the difference in what you then need to save every month. So I think it really reinforces the points I made earlier about saving £500 a month or £1,000 a month. The longer you defer it, the greater risk there is to not being able to achieve your long-term outcomes, or more compromise will need to be made so you can save more money later on because of the issue of not being as ahead of or on target earlier in life. So essentially, the longer you defer it for, the greater risk there is to your financial well-being.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that was reflected in some of the comments from respondents to the survey itself. So thank you very much, and again, thanks everyone for answering that question. Emma, if I can ask you to move through, conscious of time as well, we just got a couple more slides before we then go into a Q&A, so we'll try and get you off as close to half one as possible. So lovely. So we come into our final slides, as I say, where we're looking now at our later years partners. This group happens to be the smallest group and unsurprisingly reported some of the highest earnings. Most of the partners in this group were born in the 1960s with salaries ranging from 150k to 500k and beyond. Now, this is also appreciating that not all respondents work from London. So when I say that, that looks like quite a broad spectrum, and that's broad because of our respondents coming from all different parts of the country, all different firms, some US, some UK based. And so it's important to just note that when we're looking at some of these broader figures. So coming back to some of the results, so the results show that whilst there is an awareness among this group of self-invest platforms, the data confirms that a human advisor is valued far more than a rogue bot. So I mentioned that because earlier we've talked about the fact that both our pre-partners group and our partners groups are far more comfortable with self-invest methods of using platforms. Again, I mentioned that Meg, but others are available. But actually, when we come into our later years, they far more rely on human advice. So we see a significantly greater number actually seeking the advice of financial advisors, but there is still around 30% who are not. So Emma, if I can ask you to come on to the next slide. Lovely. So anticipation is coupled with anxiety when later years partners were asked about their retirement. Now, we asked 2 questions of this group that showed this. So, approaching retirement, are you saving enough? And when can I afford to retire on my lifetime savings? So, firstly, looking at this question, 1 in 4 equity partners, in fact, still do not believe they're saving enough for retirement. So this is a theme that's come out time and time again throughout our echelons, throughout our groups. People do not have a great feeling of confidence that they are prepared for the future. And more surprisingly, nearly 6 in 10 salaried partners still do not believe they're saving enough. I've just repeated myself there, but it's just to emphasise it that you've got people who are on very high salaries compared to those right at the start of their careers, and they still don't have that confidence, still don't feel like they're prepared. And so our second question, we asked partners if they would pay a financial advisor to provide an accurate financial forecast to identify their earliest retirement date. So this is all about, when can I afford to retire on my lifetime savings? And actually, a huge number said yes, we would, which again makes it even more surprising, the fact that there are still around 30% who aren't seeking financial advice, and again worrying because they are so close to retirement when compared to their other colleagues. So that brings our presentation of the report nearly to a close. So that covers off what the report looks like. As Matt mentioned, it will be released next week, and we'll highlight how you can get your hands on that later on. But Emma, if you can just move on to the final slide, because I appreciate we've chucked an awful lot of facts and figures at people. We've perhaps raised some questions that might be concerning around financial well-being, and the fact that people perhaps aren't as well prepared as they should be or would hope to be. And actually, what we don't want to do is for you to all go away thinking, "Oh my goodness, I'm lost cause. There's nothing for me. What do I do now?" Greg, very optimistic. Greg will be waiting. But there are options. And what is really important for us to highlight is actually that there are a variety of options available. And again, it's not just brewing. There are other things that people can be doing just by even beginning to think about your financial plan is starting. But we wanted to highlight some of the things that Brewin is doing that could help either you or some colleagues in your firm. And it's thinking about actually, right, what are the sort of the different entry points? So Brewin's got this portfolio service, we call it BPS internally, where actually it's much like these other platforms where you need a much smaller amount to start off. So maybe more targeted towards those in the earlier stages of their career, perhaps those that don't necessarily want to have a one-to-one financial advisor, moving through to something that we call Wealth Pilot. So it's a telephone-based advice service. And again, it's not necessarily restricted to those within a certain financial category, but what it is listening to in the market is understanding that, again, not everyone necessarily wants a dedicated advisor, but that option is available, and that's what you'll see on the right-hand side as well. So just wanted to highlight that. Hopefully that just gives you a little bit of assurance that there are things out there for you and your colleagues, and you don't need to wait to be wealthy. It's all about, for us here, it's all about highlighting the fact that financial well-being is important. You saw the triangle right back at the start. We believe that it should be pushing its way through and out the corporate agenda, as we've seen it is becoming more prevalent in firms. But again, we're here to help, and we wanted to show that. So, Matt, have I missed anything off? I know there was.
Not really. I think there's one final question, survey question, wouldn't mind asking, just about really how high is it the corporate agenda of your firm. I appreciate that not everybody on this call is from a legal firm. That doesn't necessarily matter. It's just important that businesses around the country and with employees are thinking about this. Whilst you're doing this, though, I'm wondering whether we could ask a quick question. I appreciate we've only got 4 minutes left of the time officially to get in some Q&As. Greg, question for you, though, which may have been raised by the audience, at least thinking about it, is it expensive to have a financial advisor?
I would say no. There will be costs involved, obviously. In our experience, the cost of not having an advisor and potentially making mistakes along the way could be far more costly. So as an example, We've had the markets reacting to COVID-19 this year. Markets have plunged. It will be a lot of people's natural reaction to try and come out of the market. If you do come out of the market, then what you're trying to do is time your way back into the market. We believe that timing the market is almost impossible, and it's more about time in the market to get to where you want to get to. So I would say that once we have a plan set out, my biggest role, my biggest responsibility is about behavioural management and making sure that people are not making decisions detrimental to their long-term plans and objectives. Where you're on your own and you don't have a financial advisor to sound ideas or concerns off, then there's a greater risk that you'll make a decision which is detrimental.
Thank you. Emma, if you're able to share the surveys. Which is interesting, I think, just to interrupt you, Hannah, I'm sure you're about to say it, which is showing that it's great that some firms are, this is on the corporate agenda, but for more than the majority, well, the majority it isn't. And yet Hannah's already mentioned the triangle of financial well-being as part of our holistic well-being. So this is the whole point. It's having an opportunity to talk to people like yourselves, to your colleagues in the legal profession, maybe to your HR, to give you, hopefully, some greater peace of mind about your financial futures. There's a greater emphasis from the government, certainly, on personal investments. We all know where the demographics are going and whether the state pension in the future will be as able to cover our retirements. And I think probably the answer to that is not to the extent that we'd like it to. So it's an important area. We've got 2 minutes left, Emma. I know you've had some questions come in.
Yeah, so I have one. Let me just stop sharing my screen so I can see you all properly. One of the questions I've had is, what's your view on the use of leases, LISAs, for retirement and a first property purchase? I ask as very few financial institutions seem to be offering them at the moment, but I've recently opened one through Moneybox. I don't know if that's a question.
Okay, I guess that's that's a big question for me to answer. I think with everything, it depends entirely on what you want to use that money for. So if I give a wider example, there's a lot of points in the presentation and the survey that talk about retirement saving, and people associate pensions with retirement saving. But actually, you can't access a pension until you're 55. And in 2028, legislation is expected to change to say that you can't access a personal pension until 10 years prior to your state pension age. Well, for me, that'd be 68. So that's already pushing back accessing my pension as I'm 58. So what we need to understand in the first instance is when you want the income, when you want the access to capital, and then we can understand which wrapper, so pension, ISA, LISA, is most appropriate to meet your objectives. So yes, I mean, there's no problem with them, provided they're being used for the correct purpose.
Thanks so much. Has anybody else got any questions or anything that they'd like to put to the team? Matt, I have one. In terms of, obviously, wellbeing's high up the agenda now, particular focus during lockdown for so many reasons. I think there'll be a sustained look at wellbeing overall for employees. Have you had any conversations with law firms about their financial wellbeing agenda for employees, and how might you be advising on how you can support them with that, what they might need to look at?
Yep, indeed, and really that's the catalyst behind the survey we've done with the lawyer, which is to, whilst we've had many conversations over the years with lawyers and members of HR around that, what the Lawyer magazine, the survey is, it's not just us saying it, it's the profession saying it, and there's still an issue to be addressed here. So yes, absolutely. Different things for different firms, different individuals. It could be simply a chat. Greg's already talked about having a financial planner, financial advisor, which is just giving you some, have a chat about your lifestyle, etc. Or it could be a bigger engagement with a law firm to say, rather on an individual basis, let's come in and talk to you as a firm and explain what you can do. It may not be with Brewin Dolphin. It may be with people may choose to self-invest or do their own pensions. But it's about having that conversation, because I use an analogy of exercise. I guess we all know that if we eat well and we exercise well, we're going to be better off physically. We all know that. We also know if we look after our money, we're going to be financially better off. But do we do that? Do we do it from an exercise point of view? Probably no, because some of us belong to gyms and some people don't. And even if we do belong to gyms, we don't really go to them. We drink coffee. I can speak for myself on that, paying a lot of money for that. But the point I'm trying to make there is we kind of know this. But do we do it? And I think for a lot of people, no, not as much as probably we should do. And sometimes you need a coach. And whether you call that a financial advisor in the context of financial services, yeah, probably. And really that's what we and others out in the profession, because it's been encouraging with a greater emphasis already said by the government, that's what we are engaged with law firms about. So long answer to a very short question, but hopefully addresses it.
No, that's okay. And I think, so as some people know, I'm involved in organising the Wales Legal Awards, and some of the entrants that come in for CSR, how are you supporting your team, the kind of questions of, you going that extra mile for those that you're working with. And is this something that we'll start to see in the future, that firms are implementing a clear agenda to ensure that all areas of wellbeing are supported, and at least that there are open doors and signposting available, because obviously if people are happier, they're more productive and they're more ambitious in their lives, and they feel more confident. And so when we do hit either a small or a severe rut in the road, it's something that we can kind of keep changing the plan and going forwards on a personal and professional life. So I think it's a fantastic idea. And certainly in terms of the coverage post event, we're looking to put a bit more of a feature together with Brewin Dolphin, and obviously that report will then be shared alongside the recording of this event. So you won't receive it immediately to share, but certainly want to wait for the report to have the greatest impact and put things into context for you, which I think is the ambition of the team today, if I'm right.
Absolutely, yeah. You probably explained it a lot better than I did. You put it into context. There is a responsibility, I think, on employers to look after their staff. Happy staff is a more productive staff, you could argue, but I think it's incumbent on businesses to look after their colleagues. So that is all part of it. I'm conscious about your time. Follow up with, we'll obviously send you a communication, Emma, to circulate about financial wellbeing. Generally, it'll be an ongoing theme that we'll be pursuing. If anybody wants to talk to myself, Hannah, or Greg, details at the end of the presentation, which we can share. The report itself is a lot bigger than what we went through today. There's more in it, but we want to give you a snapshot of some key findings. I would emphasize Brewin Dolphin. We are a investment management company. With two sides to us: financial advising side, in the person of Greg today, and the investment management side, which is looking at investments in the market. So if you weren't particularly interested in having a financial advisor, but did want to just invest, then we of course can do that for you. And Hannah mentioned in brief different platforms for different interests really that you may have. Probably draw it to a close here, Emma. Thank you very much for the audience for joining us. Please get in touch if any of this resonates with you. We can talk informally for me as much as you like, and there's no commitment on your behalf, so that's for sure, to have a conversation with us. So please do get in touch if you can. But Emma, thank you very much for hosting this.
You're very welcome. I'll see you all soon. Thanks. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.